And welcome back to America Talks Live. I'm Miranda Kahn. Earlier today, John Bachman sat down with former Fox News host Bill O'Reilly to talk about his new book, Killing England. We also got his reaction to some of the big news of the day.
And we would like to welcome back the great Bill O'Reilly to Newsmax TV, the most successful cable news anchor of all time. He's also a New York Times best-selling author many times over. And did I read this right, Bill? 17 million copies of books from the Killing series in print already?
I think that includes some of the children's books off the Killing series, but that's about right. Each Killing book has hit the #1 slot and sold about 2 million copies each. So we're very proud of the series, and Killing England coming up on September 19th. That's the release date. We got really lucky, John, as you know, because the statue controversy and the history controversy in this country ties right into Killing England, the brutal struggle for American independence.
Well, we're going to get into all that, but first I just want to mention, too, we're going to show the book on the screen, Killing England. I want folks, too, to copy or to focus on the cover of the book, too, because we want to talk about that. But
Sure.
Another great book written with your co-author, Martin DeGard. You guys do a great job. But let's get right into the book, because most everybody know the stories about George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, the guys we mentioned on the cover of the book. But what I loved about the book is there are a lot of other characters that you talk about that were pivotal in the Revolutionary War. And aside from the marquee guys, the marquee founding fathers, who is your favorite character in this book, Bill?
Benedict Arnold.
The traitor.
Benedict Arnold is an amazing character. And, you know, I don't know if there's any statues of Benedict Arnold around because he is the most infamous American traitor in history. But in the beginning, his bravery as a commander really saved George Washington and the colonial army on a number of occasions.
That's another thing.
Severely wounded, yeah.
That's another thing I love about this book, too, is because, you know, in history class, we kind of gloss over the ugly parts of this war. We think, you know, from the Boston Tea Party to Paul Revere to the Battle of Bunker Hill, Washington crossing the Potomac, it was all easy. We became an independent country. But there were so many points in the Revolutionary War that could have gone the other way, and we could have lost.
Well, here's the basic, and you're one of the first people, John, to have read the book. We just got the books.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate it.
And we want all Newsmax listeners to understand that this is a book that tells you the truth about men like George Washington. Truth is always, when you're dealing with flawed human beings, always, all right, good and bad. And that's what we're dealing with today in this country. But Americans don't know how brutal this 8-year war was. The savagery that it took to get our freedoms that we are right now exercising. And it wasn't pretty. And if you're going to go back and start to demonize, as the far left wants to do, people who were, directly involved in getting us the freedoms we enjoy today, I'm going to come after you.
And let's go ahead and talk now about some of these monuments. We've seen everything from the covering of General Robert E. Lee in Charlottesville to the desecration of the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C. Where do you think this is going to stop? Because it does seem like this is ramping up. There's a movement here, and these folks won't stop until all of these monuments are gone.
Well, there's a lot of things in play. Number one, I believe the vast majority of Americans do not want their statues and monuments defaced, destroyed, or anything like that. But it's a case by case. In New Orleans, there's a statue of General Nathan Bedford Forrest, a Confederate. The Confederate general started the Ku Klux Klan after the war, and the Klan did a lot of damage and does a lot of damage to this country. Should that statue be up there? And I say no. If you're African American and you're walking by that statue, you're going, why is there a statue of the founder of the KKK? That's a legitimate, absolutely a strong argument that guy should not be honored with anything. You want that statue, you put it in a museum, and then you tell a story about Nathan Bedford Forrest. But Robert E. Lee, it's a whole different story. Yes, Lee fought for a system that wanted slavery. No question. Yes, Lee committed treason against his own country because he put his state, Virginia, over the Union. Lee was a West Pointer. went to West Point.
Right.
So Lee is not a hero per se, in my opinion. However, he was involved after the war in healing the nation, bringing the nation together as Lincoln wanted. He was deeply involved with that. And on the battlefield, he was an honorable man. He was, Grant will tell you, U.S. Grant will tell you.
Right.
So that, are we going to wipe out Robert E. Lee's visage?
And it wasn't even until
stupid.
Gerald Ford that he was completely absolved of all of his sins from the Civil War. And you're right. I think this is critically important for both sides, that a statue of Nathan Bedford Forrest is not the same thing as a statue of Robert E. Lee.
And that's what has to happen.
And that's why there's just such a rush to go ahead and get rid of these statues. It just seems like exactly what you'd expect from the left. If one statue is bad, they're all bad, and we got to get rid of them.
But it's deeper than that, John. It's deeper than that. The people behind this movement aren't the left. They're the far left, the extremists.
Antifa.
Who believe that the United States from the jump was an evil country that exploited Native Americans, blacks, Hispanics. They believe that the whole system that Washington and Hancock and Jefferson and Madison set up was designed to keep white men in power and prosperity at the expense of minorities. This is what the far left believes. You got to understand that. So to them, destroying all of our legacy, all of it, and rebuilding it in this socialistic far left vision is what is necessary. This is how bad this is. So this movement, it's not many Americans, but they're given a pass by the media.
And not only that, too, Bill, but when you see something like Mitch Landrieu in New Orleans, who's more concerned about the Confederate statues than the pumps for the levees while a hurricane is bearing down on that city, you see folks there concerned about their political future on the left bowing to this pressure from these extremists.
Absolutely. And the pressure is going to get worse unless the majority of Americans start to push back. But the only way you can push back is if you really know our history. And since they don't teach it very well in public schools anymore, and since the colleges are radically crazy, you're a conservative, you can't even get a job at a college in most places, all right? That the American people are struggling to put forth their side of the debate, which is why I wrote Killing England. So you know exactly what Washington did right and wrong, and then you can make a determination of the totality of the man. Same thing with Jefferson and Franklin, all right? So it becomes very important for individual Americans to stand up and say, you know what, in my town, you're not going to do this fascist stuff. You're not going to knock down all this stuff. This is what ISIS does, all right? We're not going to do that here. If we want a measured debate about Nathan Bedford Forrest, let's have it. And I'll be on the side to say, move that statue, put it in a museum. That's where I am on that.
And I saw an interview recently with the Republican Congressman Tim Scott from South Carolina saying when he was on that bridge in Alabama, where the site of Martin Luther King, where they were very brutally attacked for protesting for civil rights, he said it wouldn't serve the civil rights movement to change the name of that bridge, even though it's named after someone who was in favor of segregation in Selma, Alabama. And that's where we got to be as a country. We cannot forget our history. We need to remember who these folks were for who they really were.
And how it all evolved so it doesn't happen again, because we are in a social civil war now.
And this is true.
America's in a social civil war.
I want to move on, too, because there's just so much we got to get to here. And,
Sure.
We're taking a look at President Trump here, and, he's been under serious attack following the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally and his response to what happened with the death of that young woman there. What is your take on the president and how he's doing in his job in condemning this type of behavior?
I wrote 2 columns that are posted on BillO'Reilly.com for The Hill. And they both dealt with why, when you're speaking about Nazis, you can't bring in anybody else. All right, it can't be Nazis and. So Nazis have to stand alone. They were that heinous in history. And whatever you're going to say about them has to stay in a place where there can be no intrusion with anything else. Okay. So that was President Trump's first mistake, is that he equated behavior by Nazis in Charlottesville with behavior by the Antifas. Now, there was violence on both sides. There's no question. We saw the pictures and we know what happened there because it was reported by the Associated Press and others. But because the Nazis are so bad, because their whole thing is hatred, 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 and because of the history of that, you can't really bring in anybody else. So what he should have done, the president, and this is hindsight, and I don't think he did anything on purpose, but if I did, I hope he read my column, would say, look, Nazis, no. There's no excuse for them. They're destructive, they're vile, that's it. And then the day after, say, this Antifa movement, they're becoming very, very dangerous to the country, and lay out that case, but separately.
Yeah.
That's the key. When he didn't do it separately and he brought them both in together, that gave the Trump haters the license to brand him as sympathizer. Disgusting, despicable, it's a lie, all right? But that's what the Trump haters did.
And because of that, this story won't go away. Even now, you have his chief economic advisor, Gary Cohn, coming out criticizing the way the president responded. And he says, everybody needs to do a better job of condemning this stuff. How do you think the president would respond to Gary Cohn's condemnation of really the way that Trump handled it?
Here's what I would do if I were President Trump. I would say I've spoken to Gary. He's a close friend. He's doing a great job. And I respect his point of view. And I've learned some lessons in this case. And going forward, we're going to do it differently.
Now, do you think he'll do that, though?
I don't know. I mean, look, my job is to keep an eye on all of them and make sure that I point out honestly when they make a mistake and when they do something good. But I know, and you know, John, and Newsmax knows, and everything else, there is only one bottom line on Donald Trump. Get him out of office. Overturn that election. That's it. That's what's happening here. And the media is invested in that. The far left is invested in that. The Democratic Party is invested in that. That's a lot of people trying to get him out of office.
Yep.
So you're not going to get any honesty on this level. So President Trump's got to understand that. He knows that his base is still with him, but he's got to be very careful going forward and be as magnanimous, word of the day, as possible.
I was going to ask. Magnanimous, word of the day. We got to a little early.
Yep.
All right, a couple other things I want to talk to you about, too, because we have this pending fight with Congress and President Trump over the debt ceiling. He's still talking about funding this border wall. The question is Mexico going to pay for it? We hear that border crossings, though, are down over 60%, even without a border wall. Do you see the president maybe waffling a little bit on this issue?
No, I don't. Look, the Congress does not want to throw $25 billion at a border wall. They don't, for various reasons. It's all over the place. So I
meant to say Congress waffling, not President Trump waffling. Congress waffling.
So Congress doesn't want to do it. All right. They figure, well, we can do it with enforcement, but it's more about drugs than people coming across. All right. That's what it's about. And Trump understands that. So if I'm Trump, what I'm doing is there are a tremendous amount of money. There is a tremendous amount of money goes into Homeland Security, ICE. Peel off some of that money and build your wall where it's needed. You can do that. You're a president. You can, direct your ICE officials to spend money here, spend money there. We need reinforcements here, reinforcements there. There's the wall. As far as Mexico is concerned, you want to get some of that expenditure back? You slap on tariffs on this person, that truck, that industry. When they come across, they've got to pay a tax. That's how you do it. And I think that's probably how it'll all come down.
Should Trump pardon Sheriff Joe?
Look, Arpaio defied the government. He was rightly convicted because he overstepped his local mandate. But if I were Trump, I'd pardon him. I mean, look, Arpaio's very, very adamant that illegal immigration had created chaos in Maricopa County, where he was the sheriff. that chaos was leading to crime, was leading to deprivation, was leading to all kinds of things, and that it was his duty to protect his people. Okay, that's a logical position. If he did it the wrong way, he did it the wrong way. But Trump can go in and say, look, the guy was trying to protect his folks in Phoenix and Maricopa. I'm going to give him a pardon. And that's what will happen. I know that will happen.
And when we come back, we'll hear more of John Bachman's exclusive interview with Bill O'Reilly. You're watching America Talks Live.